Good afternoon, everyone. Nolan Bowerly here, Bitcoiner. Um, this show is called The Breakup, and we're here to talk about reasons why you got to get rid of the fiat world. This show's really all about framing. What we're trying to do is really take that, just the feeling of breaking up with someone, the feeling of being in a breakup, and applying it to in a whole economy. The reason I take this approach is I'm not an Austrian school guy and I'm not a Keynesian. I think, and I do even believe that the world our grandparents built at the end of the Second World War worked in its time, right? It was good for then. It answered the challenges of the 1940s. It answered all the challenges of the eras leading up to that. They built these institutions, but entropy sets in immediately, right? Like fiat and reserve central banking, fractional reserve banking was a good thing at the time, right? They allowed the banks themselves to have the amount of protection they required in order to, at the time, help people get richer. So those were the days when a single person working in a gas station could own a house and raise a family on a single income, right? That the system worked then, right? People believed in it. And so when I'm saying it's not Austrian school or the Keynesian stuff, what I'm really saying is if enough people are getting enough out of the system, if enough people are essentially happy and satisfied, the system will perpetuate, right? It can perpetuate. It's when you enter into periods like today in America where the entropy in the US dollar and in these institutions are tearing it down. It's kind of like the beached whale frame, right? What kills a beached whale? It's its own energy, right? The energy of the whale does it. You'll recognize this in a lot of Olympic athletes or geniuses, right? People who, when that period of their life is over, their energy tends to work against them, right? You can even see it in old people making financial mistakes. I had a grandfather, really random stuff in his mid-70s, selling a house, buying this, taking some risky financial decisions years ago. Too bad Bitcoin wasn't around then. It would have worked out for the fella. But and it didn't work out that bad. But the point is, you observe this new risk tolerance, and you say, well, what is it? It's not just the genius. Really, anyone who has a certain amount of energy, if it's not directed into the right place, it's going to cause trouble. And that's what whales find themselves in when they're on the beach, when they're on the shore like that. And in some ways, that's what the modern world has found itself in, right? None of these institutions were really designed to be as terrible as they've become. Like the public education system was not designed to be awful, but it is, right? It could be child abuse at this point, honestly. Like I'm homeschooling my kids. I'm not sending them there. No way am I sending them to these places. As far as I can tell, there's no benefit, right? I don't like it. Now, today's show, what I want to focus on. We're going to get to this. It's a bit of the blackboard time later. This is a picture someone drew, and it's been going around Twitter today, and it's excellent. And it really, I think, shows a lot about the change that's happening and why it's a question of framework and why it's a question of, having that breakup mentality because it's not math. Right. It's not just, it's a little better there. It's about being wealthier, right? Not just having a bigger number, but being wealthier and all those things, healthier. So we're going to get to this in a second. But first, let's talk about reasons why you want to break up today. And I'm going to go with the news today, the news media business. There's a few reasons why I'm going with that. I'm helping produce a show with Glenn Greenwald shortly, and he's going to be attacking all of these people, of course. We love Glenn these days. He's pretty funny. Boy, does he have their number. And I think he's now sort of a cognitive dissonance machine, right? He's just triggering people everywhere. And the way I see cognitive dissonance is, and you can't even recognize it in yourself necessarily. I get it all the time. And I try to, whenever I feel like someone's making me angry or they're getting under my skin, I try to wonder if that is cognitive dissonance every time now. I've sort of reflexively done that, right? That feeling in your stomach of being sick because of something someone said or did and it bothers you so much. There's instances of right or wrong and all that. So I don't know. It's not always that way, right? It's not always going to answer it. But I like to be conscious of it in myself anyway. But when I recognize it, and recognizing it in others becomes one of the best ways to be able to recognize it in yourself, right? So, trying to limit yourself from having those reactions and being aware of what it looks like is I think the way. But what Glenn is doing, when he talks about this stuff, it's attacking everyone's worldview. It's kind of like, this guy's such a hassle. I have to rethink my whole world. Therefore, I'm going to create a whole alternative reality right now in order to justify keeping my opinions and, not thinking about Glenn much more. But that's where the meanness and anger, and I hate them, and they're making you work, basically. They're making you go get something, do something, go read a book, basically, is the implied statement. But it's not, Glenn is a part of this, but I think Glenn even, himself would admit that it's got a life of its own, and there's a bit of a show to it all anyway. So what I'm trying to talk about is not so much the individual actors, just the general decay, just the entropy that we want to talk about. I want to take two stories. The first story is not even really a story. I can't believe it's happening this way. For a long time, we've considered U.S. intelligence agencies as, let's say, intelligent, smart. They come up with, answers that should be listened to and respected. And, in general, anything they've done over the years has opened the door to the media to write about it. Like the U.S. intelligence says, is basically the first sentence of an article a day, at least, in one of the major newspapers. And it's probably been that way since the Cold War. Right. So over the years, they've established these publication channels between U.S. intelligence and various media organizations. I don't have any proof of NBC being a major vessel for this kind of news distribution. But as I understand, as many people have said, and I'm under the impression that it is not even really debated. And if you look at the number of former U.S. intelligence officials that appear paid speakers on NBC media, you could say it's true just based on that. But apparently there's more to it. I don't know anything about that stuff, right? I just have it as an impression. NBC, CIA, NSA, all those folks share press releases, I guess you could say, or at least use them as a conduit to get information out. How much further beyond that it goes, I don't know. Right? I don't know. I don't have time to even care. It doesn't matter to me. So this is not a show about a conspiracy about the CIA controlling the news, and it's not that, right? I'm not saying that. You might think that's what you heard. You're not hearing that. I'm not telling you that the CIA or the NSA controls NBC. All I'm telling you is, like any company, they have the news sources they like to get the word out, right? Like I've worked for a lot of companies. We know which news sources are going to help us tell our story, and that's kind of the whole way it goes down. But the issue then becomes, how do we know if they're telling the truth, and how do we know to what extent they're manipulating the conversation to serve their ends, maybe not ours, right? So we have to be conscious of that. So the conspiracy part, I don't know. Conspiracy is not even the right word. We're not using the word conspiracy anymore because it's used too much. What are the exact contours of a relationship? I don't know. It could be a very normal relationship in the end, right? But that doesn't change. That doesn't change that U.S. intelligence actively persuades people, right? They actively persuade people. That's what they do. That's all, in the end, that's what I'm trying to say, right? U.S. intelligence has an active role in public discourse and persuades people. Done. And so they should, I suppose, right? So they should, I suppose, especially if you're using a Cold War logic. However, things get pretty interesting. And this is the breakup part, right? This is the breakup part. So I've seen this before. I'm perusing around on Twitter, and there's a FT sponsored ad, right? The Financial Times running a sponsored ad with one of these U.S. intelligence agency press releases in it. Right. And it was about Wuhan and the pandemic. So U.S. intelligence agencies say, new information on the Wuhan pandemic. I'm not a Financial Times subscriber, obviously, so I couldn't even get past the paywall. Strange that you put a, advertised ad and then a paywall. But anyway, there they go. So it isn't just about that. But so here's the point. It's not a conspiracy thing. I'm not even trying to talk about that, right? That's not what we're doing here. What I'm trying to say is, look how dumb these people really are. Look how dumb they are. Buying paid ads in Twitter to persuade you about some bullshit, pardon my language, about some crazy idea that only they are interested in. Who did Wuhan with this and their intelligence reports? Listen, we got all kinds of people around the world. We're going to figure out what happened there eventually, right? They're trying to persuade in the middle of the game, right, before everything's out, before we're even through the pandemic, about who did what. Who knows what ends are being served here, right? And none of that is important. I don't even think they're going to be persuasive, obviously, and that's kind of what I'm laughing at, right? That's the breakup part. The people you think are the enemies of persuasion and cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin, and all that. And we have a huge persuasion game to play, but that's all we've been playing. We've been playing persuasion and Bitcoin for 10 years now, at least, right? It's been about persuasion. It's been about the psychology of what it is we're doing. And that's what has really helped perpetuate it. And really where you see how there's just no fuel in the tank over on the other end, that entropy ends up with ideas like, hey, let's buy an ad on Twitter and then we'll get our stuff out into the public and then be like, I mean, this is a loser's approach, a total loser's approach. If you look at even a lot of the coins and cryptocurrencies, what's this one now, that Min Gunsur's thing that he has with, with that paid ads? Every time I go on Twitter, I block them all and I see them. I'll never, ever, 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 ever get involved in that coin or anything to do with it because I got to see these damn ads all day. If it was so good, right, crypto Twitter would have told me. I would have seen what's going on. I'm aware of a lot of things going on in crypto, right? And so are a lot of people. It's not hard to find out new information. We're all trying to share information. There's a million free resources every single day to get any of this stuff, and you can just go get it, right? And I don't have a problem paying for it if you want a very bespoke experience with Pomp or any of these guys. That doesn't trigger me either, right? You want to sell a course? I don't sell courses. I do it, for free, but people sell courses, go ahead and do it, right? That's not the same thing. What I'm saying is we're comparing these two systems now, right? We have this amazing, the Sistine Chapel of free information, right? It's one of the great things about cryptocurrencies. I've been saying it since 2017. I gave a talk in New York City, and I said one of the most amazing things. This was the 2017, the first day it hit Bitcoin at $10,000. I was talking to the whole bunch of folks in New York City in Times Square, and I told them, this is, not only are all these new people joining Bitcoin, are all these new people psychologically accepting that we're taking over the world here. We're taking those steps. We're going that far. But what I told that crowd was, look what's happened here. All this information has been shared on public platforms. People publish on Twitter, people publish there. It's not information asymmetry. It's not what I know and what you don't know that's going to make me rich, right? It's what I've taught you and what I've shared with you and what I know and now what we all know that's going to make us all much richer, right? So it's a totally different mindset, right? And so you can see it even within information and media. And I should know, I worked for one of the largest media companies in Bitcoin for years, in crypto, with CoinDesk, right? I did a lot of work with them for years. And now I see an article today, right? And no, I'm not trying to put down any individual at CoinDesk or anything like that. But when they say, they had a headline today about Craig Wright and a court case in Miami and some Bitcoin and this and that. But they made it sound like as if a court was going to decide whether Craig Wright got the Bitcoin, right? Bit of an experience from a writer to frame it that way. I don't know what the reason was, right? So I don't know what the reason was, and it's solvable and all the rest of it. But let's take a minute, right, and understand that there is a corporate structure around some of these media companies, right? There's a corporate structure, and they have all the same problems. They've got a bid on talent, but the talent, like in all of media now, has all left, right? The individuals are the early people who you don't have to explain to them what the context of Craig Wright and the Bitcoin is, right? Those guys are all on their own now. They're at Substack. Like, they've been listening to Glenn Greenwald, right? And they're producing their own stuff. Because these articles are often written, and these perspectives are written as almost a group effort, right? Have you ever tried to write anything in a committee, right? Have you ever tried to do committee work? I worked in Parliament in Canada as well. Really hard to do committee work and come up with a written report unless someone else writes it for you. That was my trick. I would just write the damn reports for them, right? And then I would get what I wanted out of it. I did that with the Bitcoin report that the Senate published in Canada in 2015. I just wrote it, right? And I said, well, they'll have to agree on the publication now. That isn't really the way they would do it. Normally, they would have a bunch of people drafting, all kinds of people writing, and in the end, you get alphabet soup, right? You get a bunch of alphabet soup. It doesn't really feel like a coherent piece. And that's what a lot of this media and news has become. It's just alphabet soup. It's lost nonsense, right? That headline today, I don't even know. I wouldn't. I mean, obviously, I didn't even read the article after because I was shocked, and everyone on Twitter was going on about the headline too, just being offended. It was the worst thing they'd seen in journalism in a long time. Low standards, this and that. But it's the same as the best ideas of Financial Times and the U.S. intelligence agencies. I mean, it's better, right? It's the same problem. It's this committee thing. It's the structures themselves that don't work. And now we're going to go to the blackboard here and explain why that ties to Bitcoin, right? What is it that ties to Bitcoin? What is it that makes this recreation of that great meme or the great whatever it is now that I saw? It's not a meme, I guess. Whatever that thing they put on there is. And I'll explain it and relate it to what it is we're talking about with this failing institution and with the entropy that has disintegrated and dissolved and degraded the media. So what they're saying here is that currently store of value, right? These are store of value things, right? This is where people protect their wealth. It's in land, right? It's historically been in gold. Oil, it's a big one, right? Big one. Equities, right? Stock market. It's New York Stock Exchange. American companies in this case. Then we got an important line here. So these things all flow, right? There's a line. And now protect, right? The protect part is the rule of law, right? You need humans with guns for all of this. That's all humans and guns, right? The institutions that our grandparents built at the end of the Second World War did a good job of protecting these things around the world, right? And they increased our ability to share them amongst people and not necessarily in governments. But now that the entropy is set in, that's becoming harder to do, right? The gold, manipulated probably. The oil, forget it, right? I mean, who knows where we'd be if it wasn't for the dilemma of, basically the innovator's dilemma of all these companies just being able to run everything. I mean, I love oil. Don't get me wrong. Nothing beats combustion and the potential energy of gas. As a Canadian, it's as useful to me in Siberia, the Arctic, Northwest Territories, or Florida, right? I know what the cold can do to your EV batteries. It ain't good. They don't work that well, right? So here we go, and we switch, right? This is what Bitcoin has done. Protect is now an electricity and code. And this simple difference that all money and wealth can get its protect from electricity and code almost alters all of those psychologies that we talked about that got us into the trouble that we're in today. And it's this change here, right? It's this change here that this requires blood. This requires physical bodies, right? And this doesn't. This just requires energy. That's it. It's electricity and the code that's there. So what this ends up doing to that threshold, the frontier, the barrier of violence in some cases, right? So if you take a look at that U.S. intelligence briefing, it's about what happened in Wuhan with the original coronavirus getting out and whether it was created in a lab or not. We're not getting into that. We don't care, right? And I don't even know what the article said, right? I don't even know what the sponsored article said. But whatever it is, I don't trust it, right? I can't trust it because either way, it's perpetuating, protecting all wealth in these things. And no matter what, it's going to come down to these physical capacities, right? No matter what, that's just the way it's going to be. Shit, I didn't put my mic on this whole time. That sucks. Whoops. I wonder how bad the audio has been. Well, we'll see. Pretty shitty. Whoops. So anyway, pardon the poor quality of the audio, guys, and the overall poor quality of the technical. I never want to take the technical side of this thing too far. I want to keep it pretty simple. I think that's the only way I'm going to get going here and get some momentum with it. So in the end, let's go and mention about what this describes in my book, which I've published chapter 1 today, by the way. So chapter 1 today, I think in the end can help us, let's say, package this up in a way that makes sense. But it doesn't mean that there's no violence anymore, right? So that's a part of my book. Like, this is not a cure to violence at all, right? This is another excuse for violence that it eliminates, but it's not a cure, right? It's not a cure. And my book gets into that. My book is about why and how people are killing for Bitcoin in the future, and where the barrier of the frontier of violence comes in, and where this entropy, like we've been talking about this entropy that took this from being a perfect world or closer to a perfect world 80 years ago to where it is now. That entropy that brought it there, right, will hit Bitcoin too. It will, right? And it'll hit Bitcoiners too, right? Now, I don't necessarily mean that it will produce the same terrible results that fiat has in this generation, but we've got to be considerate of the new forms of violence and the new dangers and the new risks that come about with Bitcoin. And that's what my book's all about. So go have a look. I'll be back tomorrow, everyone. That's all the time I got today. These shows shouldn't last too much longer than 20 minutes, but sometimes they do. All right, everyone. I hope the audio is not so bad, and talk again soon.